morning. Welcome back. You're watching the broadcast. The number is 0791 478 990. The hashtag on Twitter. New Day KE. The short SMS code is 40920. We are taking the account of what yesterday transpired in Kenol, Murang'a County, and the politics, the pandemic, the battle for the ruling Jubilee Party, and the 2022 politics. Benji Ndolo, senior political commentator. Benji, thank you. Your time is appreciated. Good morning.
Thank you for the cookies.
Asante sana.
Asante.
Always feel at home.
Thank you, sir.
We are hospitable.
Thank you, sir.
Alenga Trustad is political commentator, also governance commentator. And thank you so much for joining us, Alenga. Good morning.
Thank you, Ayub.
Your time is appreciated. Do we have the pictures, Charles? Yes. Can I have them up? Yes, these are the pictures of yesterday. This is in Githurai. And the Deputy President, William Ruto, did convene a roadside gathering just after his tour from Murang'a County, where he attended a church service. And the other picture that is set to be rolling out is of the ODM party leader, Raila Odinga, who was in Kawangware. Still, you are seeing the Deputy President, William Ruto, atop his car in Githurai while he was addressing supporters who gathered by the roadside in Githurai after leaving Murang'a County, and that of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga in Kawangware here in Nairobi County, where he also addressed a roadside gathering of his supporters after attending a church service here in Kawangware. And Benji, starting with you, what we have witnessed in the pictures that you have just played, still pictures that rolled on our screens, is a gathering that had no regard for the Ministry of Health protocols or the guidelines, and you clearly saw that no one was in face mask, including the Deputy President William Ruto, Alice Wahome, Ndindi Nyoro, and the whole host of members of parliament who accompanied the DP yesterday. This conduct by the political players could cost the whole COVID-19 campaign, isn't it? And ultimately cost Kenyan lives.
It could, and the fact that COVID is such a deadly disease, I think you've seen US President Trump, who has been scoffing at all protocols and all guidelines for observing safety precautions with COVID, is himself now hospitalized. A 74-year-old man, really putting himself at danger, putting many of his cabinet and senior government officials. And so the price to pay for such recklessness is obvious. What continues to be a mystery, Ayub, is how, for some strange reason, COVID has not really exploded as it should, or as it has in other countries. Or as expected in the East African countries of Kenya, Tanzania especially, and Uganda. So I think the politicians, being sneaky and as well as brave, being very cunning, have realized that there's a loophole here. This thing is not really spreading as we expected, and so the best thing to do is to exploit, that unknown reason and area, and continue to hold rallies. The former Prime Minister is doing the same thing. The bigger thing, actually, apart from masks, is that there's absolutely no social distancing. These are crowds and crowds of people, of onlookers, of jobless youth. It really is unfortunate how we do our politics. It's especially unfortunate that what happened in Murang'a yesterday with the loss of 2 young people's lives and the continued misuse of the police continues to characterize our politics, and that is so backward.
And the DP, William Ruto, decrying the misuse by the police, yet he himself is the second in command in the country. We'll come to the aspect about the politicization of the police force institutions, because the Office of the Inspector General of Police is an independent institution
on paper.
By the Constitution.
By the Constitution.
Well, many say that, but it has to be independent as envisioned by the Constitution.
It can't be if it's taking its budget from the Ministry of Interior, and if it's operating under the CS Interior, then the whole independence argument is lost. By the way, I'm going to give you a challenge as we move forward to discuss Murang'a. It was a misnomer, and I expect you as a very senior and respected journalist to ask why the Director of Internal Affairs Unit would be the one sent to Murang'a. Internal Affairs Unit has to do with police conduct and any complaints against the police. So to send him on an errand opens the window also for police misconduct to continue, because when there's a report, then you say, oh, by the way, at that particular time, the director was busy investigating stuff in Murang'a. Why would you send your best person, specialist in this issue, to investigate that? That continues to be a definition and a characterization of the incompetence and the culture of mediocrity that has continued to grip the police
It ought to have
service.
happened in the aftermath, not before even what transpired in Kenol in Muranga County.
Correct.
Before the DP came, and
Correct.
the tear gassing of places of worship, which was an unfortunate instance that did transpire in Muranga County. Alenga, when you look at the crowds that normally come to witness the presence of these political leaders yesterday, the ODM party leader Raila Odinga was in Kawangware, the DP William Ruto also drew a large gathering, no social distancing, and at a time when the country is struggling to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. In the event we have cases of the pandemic resurge, it means then our healthcare system will be overwhelmed. Isn't it perhaps the responsibility of the political leaders to show some courtesy in not wanting to inundate our healthcare systems for the same reason that they're the same people who have failed our healthcare system, underfunded it? Because of the ill funding, we have no state-of-the-art infrastructure in our healthcare system. Can they be cautious enough, and why do you think they are lacking that in the midst of this pandemic?
Ayub, thank you very much for, first of all, for welcoming me onto the show, and a very good morning to our viewers back home. I want to look at this from a very different perspective, and my argument is this. We need to question the rate at which the country's leaders disobey certain regulations and ask ourselves, how did we get to this environment where everything is defied? Did it come from the top? Was it cultivated over a number of years? And why it is the point? Exactly, because we need to ask ourselves, why is it that a regulation will be given out, but then these politicians, even those who belong to the same government that issues out certain regulations, would disobey them? So where does this come from? We need to interrogate that point. And then secondly, our leaders are putting us into a compromising situation where, as normal citizens, we'll need to ask ourselves, is this pandemic real, or is it something that is made up? Because if they are the most vulnerable in the society, they have a lot to lose, but they will still endanger themselves and then endanger other people. So why are we forced as normal citizens to wear masks, and sometimes we're even arrested for not wearing them, and they do this scot-free?
Okay. So in this case, you also paint a picture of the law not applying to those at the top, but to the citizens.
Exactly.
So how do we then perhaps actualize, and does it mean then that we have a form of communication breakdown from the Ministry of Health in communicating this? Because it seems that it does not apply the law to those at the top. We have seen Cote Secretary Francis Atwoli convene a meeting of more than 40 leaders in the midst of the pandemic. Now the DP William Ruto not wearing face masks, not telling people to social distance, adhere to the guidelines by the Minister of Health, the same as the ODM party leader Raila Odinga. So what is the lesson here that the common mwananchi draws from if we are to flatten the COVID-19 curve? Because it needs to be a wholesome inclusion of our effort to fight this virus.
Ayub, the best way to look at a problem is looking at the genesis of the problem rather than scooping up an aspect of the problem and trying to concentrate on it. You remember very well from around 2002 straight to around 2013, we had a lot of adherence of the law in this country. Everybody exhibited a certain respect for the law. And then from 2013, we started declining. There are sometimes when court orders would be disobeyed, and they were convenient
for
a certain divide of the political class. It was so convenient. And then we reached a place where the opposition also started defying the government regulations in terms of what the government says. You remember, like the tear gas mandates, the government will say there will be no protests within the city, but then the opposition leaders will say whatever comes, we will be in the city, we'll meet there. And then, so this cultivated an environment of disobedience that has become part of our national culture. So we need to ask ourselves, in these 10 years, about 8 or 10 years that we have operated in an environment of defiance where defiance has been actually justified, it's become like part of our daily operations, then we need to ask ourselves, how do we get back to a land of righteous, a land of upright people, upright thinking and upright reasoning? So because clearly we are in that space where nobody listens to any other person, and we know there's no consequence for not even following regulations.
Okay, more than 200 court orders is what you talked about, and the lack of proper adherence to the law and to the implementation of the 2010 Constitution. So the president was in France. He passed by Egypt, where he also said hi to the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. But where he came from, France, Charles, can I have this up? Now, the French authorities in the city of Paris have recorded 16,000 cases of COVID-19, which resurged in a day. That is after the French government did ease some of the restriction measures which are imposed by the government to contain the pandemic. France was one of the most hit countries in Europe alongside Spain, the UK, and other countries since the start of the pandemic, late 2019, and Europe becoming the epicenter of the pandemic and the crisis until of course, the expression of worry by the World Health Organization, WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. Benji, this is a practical example as to what can happen next. And owing to the conduct of our political players, it's more or less like them saying, as Trump did in January, we have it totally under control. It's going to be just fine. That was in January.
It will miraculously
disappear.
In
February, he said it's going to disappear one day. It's like a miracle. It will disappear. In March, this is very contagious virus. It's incredible, but it's something that we have tremendous control over. And in May, he said, I wore one mask in the back area. I did not want to give the press the pleasure of seeing it. He continued many quotes. In August, he said, this thing's going away. It will go away like things go away. And in October 2, that was after testing positive, he said, tonight, Flotters, the First Lady of the United States, and I tested positive for COVID-19. We'll begin our quarantine recovery process immediately. We will get it through this together. Recklessness, no care, under-acknowledgement. And what happens next is the recording of more than 16,000 cases in the case of France. I mean, we're heading that way, isn't it?
Those aren't the utterances of a leader. Mm-hmm. Those are whims, personal whims. I saw last night he, I guess, tried to check himself out of a hospital.
In an SUV. In
an SUV to go and say hello to people who are... I mean, this is like very extremely disturbed conduct. Remember now, the recovery process. By the way, and we've talked about this severally here, Ayub, COVID is nothing to play with. This is a respiratory disease that you don't fully cure from. Why? Because it leaves a scar on the lungs. It affects the lungs in such a fundamental manner, which is why people have difficulty breathing, that if you're over 70 years old, this is not like just a common cold which comes and goes away and is maybe like a headache. This is a serious disease. A lot of people have died from this disease. And so in the case of France, if you may, 16,000 in a day.
16,000, one day.
As people push President Uhuru to continue to open and to laxen out, the protocols, the reality for President Uhuru is that he's just come from France last night, and he can see what the devastation looks like. I think the only thing that scientists need to tell us is how come the impact is less in tropical countries where there's such diseases as malaria, etc., than, for example, in the Western Hemisphere. But you can see that these are unconscionable numbers. I saw a report that says the U.S. is suffering by December 3,000 cases a day, every day. 3,000.
And now they are about 210,000 deaths.
Dead. Mm-hmm. Surely to hit 300,000 in December. That's a lot of lives. That's more lives lost than in a war. And so if you're a leader or a commander-in-chief who then underestimates a threat, who misleads people about the threat, who doesn't put the right resources into managing the threat, who is not able to level, with the public on what they need to do for their own safety, clearly that is incompetence and you're failing in leadership. And the best testament for that, the best evidence, is when you yourself become a victim of what you say is a non-issue. That tells you that your judgment is completely bad, and bad judgment is what President Uhuru must avoid.
Okay, and in this case, even as he avoids that, and perhaps comes from a country that, again, is planning to close down because of a resurgence in the cases of the virus, then are we heading the same trajectory as some of these European countries, because we see no social distancing, politicians leading the way, I mean, a mammoth of crowd, no regard for the Minister of Health guidelines. I mean, we are heading the same trajectory if we are not careful.
We're taking unnecessary risks, yes. So by being reckless, by engaging in willfully in very irresponsible conduct, we are increasing the risk, knowing full well that unlike France, unlike Italy, unlike the US,
we have no
our capacity
healthcare system
is not even a tenth of that. So this is like tempting the devil on a daily basis just to see what can happen.
Okay, Alenga, how then perhaps and who will put to stop this willy-nilly sort of character by the political players, because they seem not only failing to adhere to the guidelines by the Minister of Health, but also they are risking an entire population that's now safe at the moment, but if cases resurge, it means then that will be overwhelmed, and not only at the national level, but equally at the counties where there seems to be no observance of social distancing at all.
Ayub, when we try to analyze this issue that is really annoying, we as normal citizens have listened to what the government has said and the Ministry of Health. We've cut down on our operations deliberately because we want to stay safe. But then you're looking at a deputy president who is part of the government that is giving those regulations, still running out very active political campaigns for a 2022 presidential election. I mean, we need to get serious, and deputy president needs to be put down and ask what does he want for the country, surely.
All right.
Because at the end of the day, this responsibility must rest on somebody's door. We cannot continue saying politicians, the political class, these people have names, and we can name them and call them out.
Okay, it's the Deputy President William Ruto, the ODM party leader Raila Odinga, who mainly as part of the other established political players who are gathered in this crowd. We have seen that yesterday happen in Kawangware and in Githurai and in Murang'a County, where the DP, after attending a church service in Murang'a, was heading to Nairobi, and then he met a roadside gathering in Githurai. We saw the numbers. In Kawangware, equally the same happened. I mean, he's the deputy and Odinga is the partner in the handshake. They seem to be responsible, isn't it? And they know that we have under-equipped and ill-funded healthcare system, yet they're not taking responsibility from the top. I mean, what moral authority will they have later to tell these crowds that you must observe social distancing and adhere to the guidelines by the Minister of Health?
Yeah, but you see, it becomes very serious and actually incapacitates the president in trying to push this, because when he pushes this and his own deputy is actively outside there, so then it sends a different signal, because you cannot govern your own partner in the government, and then how would you expect the other people to even obey those regulations if your own principal assistant is reneging against the regulation that your government is giving out?
Okay, in other words, it is a case of your first principal assistant who is not going by the advice laid down by the Ministry of Health. Charles, can I have the video? Yes, briefly, because we need to play the soundbite. Yes,
yeah, maybe just to make the show a little interesting, Wakili. Ayub, maybe you can help us, because sometimes I like to also, challenge you to ask a question as much as you're asking us. This thing is bringing so much dysfunction in the government, so much chaos. In your considered opinion, as an analyst, as a senior journalist, why is the DP campaigning so hard? Because the cost also is he's annoying the president and causing so much friction and making enemies. I'm just curious as to, and they're asking him to stop. Don't come to the party headquarters. Stop going out. Help the president. Why is the DP insistent on campaigning? I just don't understand it.
Okay.
What do you think is the answer?
We'll have some sound bites, and I like to read some tweets. Of course, maybe running away from not being tagged, the same as not visionary, not more or less ambitious, as Kalonzo Musyoka did. He never actively campaigned.
Yeah, so he's the exact opposite. I worked for Honorable Kalonzo. And I can just tell you for free that they are night and day. So Kalonzo pretty much did nothing. The DP is doing everything. How about finding a sweet spot somewhere in the middle?
Okay.
Because for sure, if Kalonzo also campaigned like that, for sure he'd have been president. But these are also very different circumstances. And this is actually driving the president crazy. So why do it?
Okay, and now that he has the...
What's the answer?
And he has the constitutional immunity, Father.
Correct.
That he can't be sacked by the
It can't just be chased away because he's not appointed.
Who will be casualty if he were to do what Ruto is doing.
Is he overplaying his hand? Why is he? I don't understand.
We'll come to that aspect about analyzing the ruling Jubilee Party crisis, why he's doing so.
Right.
And yesterday, he did that in Murang'a County, the hotbed of Kenya's politics, the crown and the jewel of Kenya's politics, despite what we witnessed, the clashes I'm talking about in Murang'a County. Charles, as I have that soundbite by the Deputy President William Ruto, can we also have that incorporated alongside the police who are also chasing the factions that were clashing in the county yesterday, and you'll know how to play with that. So starting off with which, that is your responsibility. Go ahead, please, Charles.
We are changing the conversation. The conversation is not going to be about leaders. It is going to be about ordinary citizens. The conversation is not going to be about power. It's going to be about empowerment of ordinary people. The conversation is not going to be about positions. It is going to be jobs for ordinary citizens. Mpaka tutatue shida ya watu wadogo. Hatuwezi kuongea mambo ya watu wakubwa. We have talked about leaders and madosi for a long time. It is time we talk about ordinary people, sort out their issues, sort out their problems. Wale wadosi watajipanga. Ati mimi, ile mimi ninafanya, ati mimi na wanyang'anya wateja. Ati hawa mahasla, mtu ya mama mboga akiwa busy, mtu ya bodaboda akiwa busy, yule wa wheelbarrow akiwa busy, yule wa mkokoteni akiwa busy, ati watakosa watu ya kutupa mawe na kufanya maandamano. Na kama wewe ni mbunge, alafu unaenda kuchukua mtoto ya mtu mwingine, unamulipa shilingi 500, akuja alete fujo, alafu anaumizwa, na wewe mtoto yako umepeleka shule, bibi yako wako nyumbani, wewe kichwa yako inafanya kazi reverse ama inafanya kazi ikienda wapi?
That is the Deputy President yesterday who spoke after attending a church service in Murang'a County. And before I take the account of my panel here, let's also see how police managed to restore normalcy in Murang'a County after two factions of the ruling Jubilee Party clashed. Here, the pictures rolling on your screens are that of police officers who yesterday were very, very struggling to restore order and normalcy in the county following the clashes witnessed that left 2 people dead.
Just Google.
Those are the pictures that you have seen of police yesterday really struggling to restore order and normalcy in the county of Murang'a. Benji, to you. All this for 2022. The DP William Ruto is in outright campaign. We'll come to the aspect about why, but isn't it also unfortunate that we have witnessed yesterday police coming into this and tear-gassing places of worship? That is an unfortunate bit, but do you think this was a political engineered by us, alleged by some William Ruto allies that Sabina Chege, the woman MP, had bankrolled the youth to disrupt the event by the Deputy President William Ruto?
You see, this is backward politics. This is how we've always done our politics. This is how we do the politics of intimidation, violence, spoiling, hating, you know. The Deputy President obviously has a lot of influence. If it was a Kuro court going to Murang'a, no one would have bothered. But they look at everywhere the Deputy President is going simply because he is a force. The Deputy President is a very serious political animal. I may not agree with some of his tactics because the aggression is too much, but he is causing the other side to overplay their hand, to over-panic. And that's why the use of force, what the police needs to do is be very independent, number one, very objective. Number two, look at tactics. You know, it's very tacky when a police service just shows up to beat one side, shows up to just throw tear gas willy-nilly, anyhowly, to old people, into places of worship. So it's really unfortunate. And as well, you know, it's obvious that the deputy president has political enemies. So it's conceivable that these enemies, having no other, you know, tactics to employ, simply misuse youth to block him. And I think this is a narrative that happened with this particular case in Kenol Muranga, is you hire youth to block him, but then again, in a very convoluted manner, these kind of events end up marketing him more. Why? The person of William Ruto is not someone to back down from a fight. Okay, he's not someone to look at a fight and say, I can't go there. Okay. That's exactly where he'll go.
Is it then, before I come to Alenga, the same realization here as posed by the former Mokoroweni member of parliament, that is Kabando wa Kabando. I quote him, he said, Ruto has first learned that kumi yangu kumi yako mantra won't go far. So he's cleverly walking on the outer lane, and it is working. Ignore him at your own loss. Victimhood is paying off for the Deputy President, William Ruto. He's the handshake supporter. Yes, and this yesterday happened in Muranga County.
Correct, because victimhood earns sympathy votes, especially in the Kenya context. Big-time sympathy votes. But there's going to be an all-out revolt in Central, and I've told you that.
Okay, but from the philosophical perspective, then perhaps, is it hard, and will it be hard, for the president to sell Odinga presidency, say, as champion currently modelled by Murathe and company in central Kenya, than the DP William Ruto, who has been beside the president not only in 2013 and 17, but in 2002, when Amoy Protoshe, then Kenyatta, lost to Kibaki? Will it be hard? Does he have influence in terms of selling Odinga?
Not only will it be hard, it will be impossible. If you have engaged in name-calling and you're diametrically opposed since the time of your fathers, and also the reality on the ground is that the DP made the president, how then are you going to come back, especially on the backdrop of failed industries, failed economy, crisis in coffee sector, crisis in tea, no jobs? How are you going to come and tell those same people that this is what I want and let us go against the person that stood with us? There is going to be That's an explosion. Okay. There's going to be absolute outrage like you cannot believe. Okay. That's a reality.
Alenga, President Uhuru Kenyatta, in two different occasions, talked to Central Kenya, the House of Mumbi, if you may like it, in two different aspects, in reverse psychology, but it never gave him feedback. When he said ukijana wa kutangatanga in Nairobi County, the mountain was quiet. In Karatina, when he opened a market in 2018, he said, my choice for 2022 will shock you. It went mute. I mean, is the president, this time he is taking in not speaking actively about his succession politics and wanting to be akibaki in that aspect, or if he is to actively participate in the succession politics to be Amoy in 2002, in these two scenarios, how will it play out for the president, and the timing aspect here on when he will communicate to the mountains on who he wants to succeed him?
But before you come in, can I just say one sentence?
Let me respond to that. Okay. You'll have no, go ahead, Alenga. You respond to that. I'll get him.
First and foremost, I just want to go back to what my brother Benji said. He said that it will be impossible for Uhuru Kenyatta to sell a Raila presidency in Central. The fact of the matter is, Uhuru or Raila, if Uhuru indeed will be backing Raila for the presidency, and he takes this conversation to Central Kenya, he's not looking for a majority vote. He's just looking for about 800,000 votes. And those
of the entire central Kenya region, out of the possible 5 million.
Yes, if you look at the statistics of the 2013 election, even after the rigging, Raila had 44% of the total tally. In 2017, he still had 44%. So which means this 44% is kind of a constant number for Raila. That support base is constant.
Across the country, that is.
So if you need 50 plus 1 to win the presidency, you obviously need like 6% from Central Kenya. And other people that didn't vote for you in the previous two elections. So if you narrow down that 6%, it's about 750,000 votes to 800,000
Disclaimer.
votes.
Disclaimer.
That you can easily get. But again, before you bring in the disclaimer is, who in Central is actually supporting Uhuru Kenyatta, Deputy President William Ruto?
We have MPs who
when
support
this journey
him.
began, when this journey began, there was a whole battery of MPs from central Kenya that were always
died down now.
accompanying the deputy president in every rally and saying the way they are behind him. Today, we have narrowed the number to about 3-4.
Thank you.
So that should be, that in statistics is a point, and there's a communication that it is expressing in the political space. So does it mean if this shedding off was happening, will we see more shedding off of these numbers? When Ndolo was in his home constituency the other day, we saw guys completely shutting him up from speaking to them. What does that indicate? And then when you look at the kind of conversation that Deputy President William Ruto is bringing out, the issue of dynasty stroke hustlers. And that is my important point. The Deputy President needs to be checked. That conversation needs to be stopped. That is how division of countries and things like genocide starts.
And even Kobia did communicate that, and also Professor Peter Kagwanja did yesterday also in his Sunday article, said while the strategy has enabled Ruto to play revolutionary politics below the radar of human rights bodies and the International Criminal Court, it is a big security threat to Kenya.
Yes, but that's
but you have to respond to other question. Yes,
yeah, I was just giving him just a little guidance. It was just a one sentence statement, but now that you've given me an opportunity, maybe allow me to maybe divulge a little further, but very briefly. Number one, who the president will endorse many times is irrelevant, especially if it's a lame duck presidency, A. B, if the president's legacy, if the president's record is not very strong and robust. It really, in fact, many a time, the president's endorsement, as happened in 2002, is the kiss of death. So Moi, at that point, had bankrupted the country, was weak, was unwanted, was unpopular. For him to say, this is the person I want, that is the end
and in
of
public. And
so,
because of lacking proper economic track record, Uhuru Kenyatta became the casualty.
Exactly. So the person who they wanted, the people wanted, is the one who Moi didn't want. So let us get away from this school of thought that it's very important for the president to endorse you. That's not necessarily true. That might actually be the kiss of death, number one. Number two, this 44% of Raila, you know, I personally used to support Raila. I don't support Raila anymore. Miguno supports Raila. He doesn't support Raila anymore. Kalonzo had supported Raila during these bids that you talk about. He's not supporting Raila anymore. And he has also his followers, etc., etc. It is foolhardy. Raila is a very popular politician. But remember, Raila also has a lot of... I saw a discussion the other day, and it was a discussion around members of parliament. It was a very simple poll. Which is the member of parliament who achieved the least? I think it was in Langata or Kibra. Overwhelmingly, the name that came up was Raila Odinga. And the member of parliament who achieved the most was the late Ken Okoth. These are just simple truths.
In a span of 5 years.
Yeah, in a span of just no time whatsoever, though Raila was there for 2 decades, for 4 terms, 4 5-year terms. And so it is a fact that Raila is popular and liked by those who like him. But this 44%, because of disillusionment, because of... You see, as a leader, it's not a casual matter to say, for sure I'm going to win. We have A, B, C, D, we have 10 million votes. Then to also casually come and say, you know, I was taking you to Canaan, then we found crocodiles. You know, and... You know, there's questions around, for example, the M-Pesa number where they raised money.
In terms
and that's how democracies work.
In terms of the Canaan and the crossing over of the river to Jordan, you mentioned the crocodile aspect. In this case, Raila, the handshake happened, more or less. It's what it translates to. Then does it mean Odinga might have shedded off some chunk of his support base here in agreeing to shake hands with President Uhuru Kenyatta? Correct.
Because even in so doing, I mean, for example, Raila doesn't have David Nd's support. David Ndi has friends, colleagues, relatives that worked for him. So again, even in asserting that you found crocodiles, the person whose hand you're shaking, you're acknowledging that that's a crocodile. So I'm expressing this because there's a lot of frustration, especially around young educated folks, with our politics. It's like our politics is complete classic rubbish. And how we're going to fix this politics is, one, Ayub, by discussing the truth, whether privately or on broadcast, about what ails our politics, so that, two, we can then be able to re-engineer our politics and come up with something completely different and something palatable for the Kenyan public. Thus far, this is not happening. And it's not fair to just say, oh, you know, we have this 44%.
Okay.
In fact, let me give the last example is what Raila's own elder brother was saying, Oburu.
Now we have
like,
the system.
we have had a lot of issues. Now we have the system. So whatever we'll get, we'll just top up. We'll just rig.
Okay.
So rigging is fine as long as we do it. But rigging, electoral injustice is a problem when it is done against us.
And
this is the reality of our politics,
okay,
and it is completely rubbish. That's why I put on this paper of mine a big X.
Okay, now, given that, as you mentioned, on one end, the politics that is wrong, on the other, the DP William Ruto is talking about a changing conversation, a paradigm shift.
Correct.
And he says this must be based on the hustler versus dynasty, the haves and the have-not.
He's disingenuous, but he's smart enough to know that that is the issue in Kenya.
But isn't he taking advantage of a vulnerable population, made vulnerable by the same government he belongs to, but now distancing himself from the president in wanting to engineer an economic plan in uplifting their life standards? I mean, isn't it hypocritical also on the other end of the political divide?
It is hypocritical, but he's a wily politician. He's a sneaky guy. So what they do is, I'm a social activist myself. I'm a social analyst. So they pick the data which we talk about. For example, the discrepancy between, and the chasm between the rich and the poor, the fact that people are going hungry. We talk about that all the time. We talk about it sincerely. We raise concerns about it. So what a wily politician would do would say, okay, this is the reality. How can I exploit that reality? And you'll be surprised that he's getting a lot of traction. He's getting, in fact, I saw a discussion yesterday on Facebook by a Raila supporter, a known Raila supporter, who says he was in Kawangware yesterday. He saw the crowds. He noticed there was very diminished energy. And he was saying, you guys, stop pampering Baba. People are coming out, but they don't have the kind of energy that the deputy president's people have. Why? Because outside of reggae and entertainment, etc., we have not really addressed the issues, and this is a concern. And I agreed with those sentiments.
Okay, and in that regard then, am I right to assume that you still be putting a big X on the other end of the political divide, the strategy by the DP William Ruto?
Put an XY?
Yes.
Put an XY.
Because you said the other side of the political divide equally is not achieving what it ought to be. No clean politics. The DP William Ruto is taking advantage of vulnerable people. They never did what Kibaki did after coming even to take over a country that was literally bankrupted by the Moi government.
And that's why I say Kibaki is such a special man, because guess what? Kibaki was also a long-time KANU operative, but he was very clear in his mind that misrule, you know, degraded democracy and a bad economy are the problems that face this country, whereas Uhuru, Ruto, etc., all these guys, again, are long-time KANU guys, and have just not been able to run away from KANUism, and that's why you see the malaise the way it is, the continued, you know, misrule, misuse of resources.
Okay.
Corruption is the best evidence, Ayub, that in this day and age, so many years after KANU left power, what's the number one problem again today? Corruption. I mean, how can that be? But we ran a campaign against corruption in 2001.
Okay.
And 20 years later, we're running a corruption in 2022 against corruption.
And we seem
that's not growth.
And we seem to be falling short. But as a liberal Democrat, social activist, who wants the best for this country in terms
maybe a centrist,
in terms of our democracy thriving, do you see the politics of the DP William Ruto right in wanting to base it on or rooting it on hustler versus dynasty narrative?
I think he's a wrong person to characterize the politics that way. Okay. Why? Again, because he's a KANU guy, he's a guy who's been around. I could maybe do that, but then it has significant risks as well, because it puts the country or pits the country into groups, one against the other. Okay. However, it is the reality that we have elites and dynasties against the majority. What I would have rather done is run politics of unification that seek to create opportunity and to unify the country, but sometimes those kinds of politics are quote-unquote boring. Okay. So we are where we are. Okay. And interesting times ahead.
Now, Alenga and Benji, let's now take stock of the other dilemma that faces President Uhuru Kenyatta as he jetted into the country. And one of the other major developments is the crisis in the ruling Jubilee Party. So let's have this soundbite from the ruling Jubilee Party Secretary General Raphael Tuju, who issued a press at 24 hours after the Deputy President William Ruto met over 20 MPs who are allied to his 2022 cause at the ruling Jubilee Party headquarters in Pangani here in Nairobi County, saying that the DP should stop using Pangani headquarters and that this should stop. And this is what Raphael Tuju had to say.
The Deputy Party leader, as a self-declared presidential candidate of 2022, will not be allowed to use the party headquarters as a center of operationalization of his 2022 campaign and to use the center for intimidation of potential opponents or intimidation of the staff. It is no longer tenable for the Deputy President to use the party platform, including statements from the party headquarters, to advance his divisive so-called hustler politics that are counter to the party and the President's platform of uniting the country, fighting against corruption, and the agenda 4 items. The NMC has recommended to the NEC that the DP ceases to be deputy party leader after he opened the so-called Jubilee Asili offices that is reserved for him and his allies until such a time that this development of Jubilee Asili will be discussed at the NEC.
That is the ruling Jubilee Party Secretary Raphael Tuju, who issued the presser last week. And here's the cartoon edition of the Daily Nation.
And who in 2003?
Okay, we'll come to that aspect. He was the tourism minister. The ruling Jubilee Party, you can see the picture is of the interpretation of the building in Pangani, the headquarters of the ruling Jubilee Party. And instead of the firm handshake that symbolizes the party as part of its emblem, you can see how the fist fight is about to unfold between the two persons who are unidentified in the picture of the ruling Jubilee Party. And the wordings is all about, you can see how toxic the language is politically between members of the ruling Jubilee Party, which again further intensifies the crisis within President Uhuru Kenyatta's party as divisions widen by the day and as he jets back into the country to take note of this crisis. I'm sure he was informed equally and briefed during his tour in France when he met the French President Emmanuel Macron. Alenga, coming to you. Looking at that presser, before we come to the many aspects that accompany and are intertwined and meshed into that, looking at the tone of Tuju, was this a presser that was censured by the top organ of the ruling Jubilee Party, or was it one that independently came from the Secretary General Raphael Tuju himself?
Ayub, first of all, Benji has, my friend Benji has said a lot of things here that I feel should not go unchallenged.
Okay, respond to them. You have the time.
Yeah, number one, Deputy President William Ruto, I believe we can improve the state of our leaders, because Benji agrees that our politics is
toxic.
Benji, toxic. But then for us to fix, we must agree to start speaking to our leaders the truth. Mm-hmm. But then for me, the Deputy President, I'll tell him without blinking an eye that he's a liar. He is a liar, and that should not be allowed to go. We need to challenge this. Every time he brings up a lie, we challenge it and we tell him, this is a lie. Number one, the Deputy President has been unable to define himself. How will he define the people that he wants to rule? For Deputy President to call himself a hustler, has he lacked the vocabulary to just call himself a billionaire or a millionaire or whatever it is? He can never be a hustler. Mm-hmm. He's not a hustler. He has never been one.
So he's taking
advantage.
This
is a man who touched over 1 million shillings in 1991. When 1 million shillings could even be given out as foreign aid. Mm-hmm. So this is a man who cannot call himself a hustler. When he brings desperate young people together and lies to them that he's there to improve their life and has not been able to do anything, even legislate something that would improve the lives of young people when he was in parliament, through all the positions he has been in, he has enjoyed all the trappings of power under Jubilee government for the last 8 years. And then now he realizes that the government that he serves does not serve the interests of the young people. And then he still continues to sit in that government without doing the honorable thing of saying, well, I trash this government, I feel it is ineffective, I have stepped out of this government, so that we can actually say, yes, you are leading us to a path you are determined.
Okay, so in other words, he's running away from...
He's drawing a salary from that same government.
Okay.
Point of order.
He's drawing a privilege from that same government, the government that he says is not working for us.
Point of order.
Okay, Alenga, in other words, you're saying that the DP William Ruto is running away from the dirty Jubilee kitchen and the dismal domestic record in terms of the economic management of the country by him and his boss, the president.
Not even that, Ayub. The Deputy President is running away from the systemic issues of Kenyan leadership. The issue we have with the leadership of Kenya is dominance of the top leadership by two communities since independence. That's a reality. the deputy president wants to drive that conversation away so that he can divide us between hustlers and dynasties. Who are dynasties? There's no dynasty in this country. If you went to the dictionary definition of a dynasty, there is none in this country.
Okay, and in responding to my question, before you come in, Benji, do you think that the statement by Tuju then was self-sanctioned by the SG Rafael Tuju, or it came from above, an exogenous source in wanting to issue that statement to make it clear to the DP that he can't anymore visit the ruling Jubilee Party headquarters?
If you listen to that statement by Rafael Tuju, clearly you will be able to see that that was a call from his boss that came and said, the boss told him, go and fix this mess. But again, Jubilee government is the one that brought us Deputy President William Ruto.
Okay.
The same one who is running around the country and lying to our young people and enjoying that they are lower than him. If you have a deputy president who is in charge of a government that was elected on a very superfluous manifesto that even had the big four agenda, and then that deputy president reduces his ambitions to issuing wheelbarrows to young people and Kokoteni, what kind of leadership is that? That is a leadership that wants you to be completely emancipated, completely emasculated, completely impoverished, so that if he gets into the leadership, then he can rule in perpetuity. Because one tool that dictators use is impoverishing the community.
Okay.
When you are poor, you do not think about political conversations because they don't matter.
Point of
to you.
order, are you? Point of order.
We need to go on break.
Yes,
Benji,
we will go on break. Before you go on break,
briefly, and I'll come and start with you as we finish
I
up.
cherish intellectual stimulation. My question to Alenga is this. He has called the deputy president a liar.
Yes.
He has given many examples about lying, etc. My question is, Honorable William Ruto has been accused very publicly and internationally of crimes against humanity. Why does Alenga think that to assert that he's a liar, it's just like nothing completely? I mean, how is that even a point? To me, and I'm sure that's how they look at it, to them that is completely a non-issue. He has been ranked by polls in Kenya as the most corrupt politician in this country. So, how is it for us as an analyst or as a strategist to say that he's a liar? That's just like saying completely nothing.
Okay.
We can go on break.
After the break, we'll come back to the Rafael Tuju statement.
He won't even respond to you.
Last week, and we'll be taking account of whether this was sanctioned by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the bigger consequence in terms of the extensive consequences that it does have is kicking out the DP William Ruto from the party, which means an impeachment might be forthcoming, as he said last night by the ruling Jubilee Party Vice Chairperson David Murathe, who said it is an option on the table. After the break on the broadcast. Welcome back. Good afternoon. You are watching the broadcast. The number is 0791478990. The hashtag on Twitter, NewDayKE. The short SMS code is 40920. Benji is still on you as we finish up in the next 20 minutes or so. And the turmoil in the ruling Jubilee Party continues. And of course, by virtue of that press statement issued by Rafael Tuju last week on Thursday. I mean, who in the end here, Benji, takes the responsibility, the ultimate responsibility in restoring order to the ruling Jubilee Party, because the president apparently appears to be muted on this matter? Does he need to take charge of this party, because the crisis deepened by the day and the friction appears to be even widening the divide between
every single day
factions in the ruling Jubilee Party?
I'm so tired of this question, because every single week we go through this. You know, I don't know if it's because he's my alma mater or I consider him a friend, but you've got to really feel sorry for President Uhuru. And this Mzee talked about it from NCIC, Ole Kaparo.
Yes.
Like now he went to France. It's a good initiative. We need to expand these roads. We need a lot of infrastructure to continue from where Kibaki left. But then he's also hammered a lot because of the national debt and because of corruption. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. And for sure, you've got to look at him and kind of feel sorry for him. Because really, what would you say is working? What would you say is working? And everything is so stressful. There's so much name calling. Now his deputy has clearly and totally gone wrong. Totally gone rogue, because he's not helping him with his agenda.
Sad.
Big Four stopped long ago. COVID money has been looted. KEMSA is a crime scene. NYS is a forgotten crime scene.
Eurobond.
NYS 2, I mean, name it. And so, who is there to restore dignity in Jubilee? It would be him. How is he going to do it? I don't know. It's just unfortunate.
So it means then that there are other
But
problems.
it's the fruits of what you plant.
Okay, then it's...
It's the fruits of what...
So in other words...
What else could Jubilee have really...
Okay, then in other words, the ruling Jubilee Party crisis...
Everything is a controversy, even SGR.
Just an iota of the other main problems, macro problems in the country: corruption, the economy.
Everything.
Political divisions.
Did you see a tweet by Margaret Kobia?
Yes.
That she then deleted, where she said, pleased to be here to represent, as chief guest, to represent
His Excellency the
His
President.
Excellency the President, joined by the Deputy
Saturday.
President and the former Prime Minister. I mean, that's just like anarchy. Then it got so much, then she deleted it. I mean, how can you run something more of a shambles than this? There's questions around the public service, around the public service formula for hiring. Now there's a freeze on public service, yet there's wastage of public money. At the same time, there's no jobs. Graduates are roasting maize. I mean, why should you be the president of a country where graduates are telling you openly, suicide cases are up? It's just insanity. I've seen another tweet here by a doctorist talking about personal responsibility, and I talk about that all the time. And he's saying that even with curfew and the lack of curfew, okay, or the enforcement of curfew, you saw the senator of Nairobi himself threatening officers with transfer. He's saying it's Kenyans themselves who are drinking so much, drinking past curfew hours, rushing home, causing accidents on the way. Then you get home to your compound, you come out of your car because you're drunk, and you scream until the neighbors think it's thugs. This kind of behavior is rampant. It's a fact.
Okay.
People are stressed and crazy, and this is the country we live in.
Okay.
But we really need inspirational leadership. That's a fact.
And hope.
And I don't think Uhuru can offer that.
Okay. Alenga, then when you look at the Mwai Kibaki government that came to power in 2002 after the exit of Kano and the defeat by the NAC government, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data shows that the Kibaki promise were largely met, with 70% of jobs coming from the informal sector and achievements made in other sectors of the economy. And at least making 80% of the 1 million jobs that Kibaki did promise in 2002. And you look that vis-a-vis what President Uhuru Kenyatta and DP William Ruto government achieved between 2013 and now 2020. It seems incomparable, isn't it, that we need some form of economic, proper management of the country, which seems to be failing on the part of the president. And does the handshake perhaps give him a form of salvageable bond, perhaps, to cover the economic shortcomings of the president since 2013?
Ayub, that's a very fantastic question, but I will tie it to the previous question that you didn't give me an opportunity to say something about.
Yes, go ahead.
The one that you specifically addressed to Benji to say something about the Jubilee administration and how the breaking ins can be bridged. The issue in Jubilee is an issue that haunts most of our political parties and most of our political coalitions. Because when we come together as coalitions, our intention is usually power and how we shall divide it thereafter. So we do not have any other plan for anything that comes. Ours is we have gotten in there, this is how we are sharing it. And when we share, once we have shared it, then we start figuring out what can we do.
Okay.
So clearly, Jubilee government came into power, and it had a very fantastic manifesto. It had their agenda labeled up very nicely. And then Jubilee government had the lack of drawing a lot of monies from outside in terms of foreign loans. But this was a very good move for a country that wanted to move from one point to another. It was a very fantastic move.
Okay.
But then when these monies came in, they failed to fall in the right hands of the people that would channel this money to projects that would feed into the economy, open up our economy, create more jobs. And the whole framework was faulty because it was full of greed all the way. Like from the point the money comes in, all the way there was somebody picking out of the money until when it comes to the project, there is nothing completely to implement. In this happening, the buck stops with the president. because at the end of the day, people will question where you took the country, where you picked it from, and where you delivered the
Where you
country.
left it,
Okay.
Yeah.
And Benji, Charles, can I have Hillary will be there in a short while to give me the cartoon edition of the People Daily by Stano towards the end tab of the touchscreen. Hillary, do we have that? On your last end.
I didn't complete my
Yes,
statement.
yes,
Are you-
go ahead. Yes, complete as we get that cartoon.
So what needs to be done from this point going forward to fix this mess that the Jubilee administration put us all in? And I hope Benji will agree with me on this for the first time, that we actually need an overhaul of this government in 2022. They have done enough since, and it is irredeemable where we are.
How will that happen if we have no new leaders? If you and I haven't offered ourselves?
Okay,
So-
and it brings me to the
Easier
aspect about
said than
BBS.
done.
Go ahead, finish up,
So
please.
if we think we want to, there are a number of people that are thinking they want now, from the duo of Uhuru and Ruto, which failed to deliver, they now want to single out Ruto and give him to continue to deliver. That's false. That's false. That is a fallacy, and we cannot go. If we go that direction, we'll be digging deeper into the dungeons, and there's no way to come back. Let's change our leadership. Let's revolutionize our leadership and get people that have an agenda for this country.
Okay, and that is what you are talking about, a total change of the conversation and a paradigm shift if we are to change the political conversation in this country. And this is what Stano incorporated. On the People Daily cartoon, you can see how the DP William Ruto is riding on the hustler narrative, and the vulnerable Wanjiku. You can see the wheelbarrow is pushing, is carrying a woman who, in this case, is a representation of the Kenyan public. Peep, peep is what she says. It's breakless. It can go as long as it can. The DP William Ruto, on the other end, appears to be shouldering the responsibility of pulling along the cart that is carrying also to a beba, as he likes saying. And this is the narrative that continues to shape his political agenda, as brilliantly captured by Stano in the People Daily. Now, Benji, let me quote still the former Assistant Minister, Kabando wa Kabando, who said, the Uhuru Rao, in this case he means the handshake, bridge that some of us passionately promoted has collapsed. The merchants of impunity and looting simply exchanged buttons. The relay has continued. It seems even the BBA cannot, according to him, offer a new form of political life if Kenya is to attain heights of prosperity.
I think to say it has collapsed is an exaggeration. I just think that it's a misnomer, that whole handshake. I remember this country has a TGRC report.
Unimplemented.
Unimplemented.
Ndungulan report.
In writing, black and white. These are some
In
of the
Parliament,
things
in
Raila
Parliament.
himself has staked his whole life and his whole career fighting for. So now he's gagged, let alone big things like TGRC. He cannot even comment on things like KEMSA, where his own MPs are also suspects, and presumably himself. And that's what I'm saying, it's a misnomer. It's like trying to milk water from a stone. Remember, even during BBI, Raila has been going around saying, you know, the other side, they didn't defeat us. So what are we
He said
really
that
doing?
in Mombasa County.
Of course, and many other things. And so where are we really at where you have differences of ideology, of opinion, historical differences, and now you want to do a whitewash, while Kenyans are struggling with food, with no jobs, etc. Then you say, let's do BBI to expand the executive so that after elections, we don't have a clash. What we do is we accommodate tokenism. We bring someone from Coast, we bring someone from the northern part of the country, we bring someone from the western part of the country, we bring someone from Nyanza, so that we have a calm, and the calm, because people are eating at the table, means that we are all, is pseudo-unity.
Okay.
That is not the way to lead anything. Allow me to just read a tweet here from Karori Douglas. Says, following the conversation from Kisii at Ebru TV Kenya, and I don't like the way Mzalendo Alenga is responding to questions on his table. He's being irrelevant and not to the point that he likes merit in every point that he's passing through. So, Karori, thanks for watching. I'm happy when I see that young people are watching
Yes.
to get answers here.
And of course, from across the country.
I just don't see the way forward if we don't have a change in how we do the politics and if we don't have new players in the game.
Okay.
Which brings me then to my final
Yes.
challenge to
briefly,
my brother Alenga here.
before I pose the next question.
So he has talked about the deputy president not deserving another chance. Maybe he can tell us of the front runners or of who needs to be. Is it
Okay.
Okot? Who would you support,
Okay.
Alenga, as
And he has the right
to usher in change?
He has
Yeah,
the
that's
right to
just a
contest.
question.
Of course,
Yes.
we are in a democracy.
Yes.
It isn't Russia, where in the Kremlin, of the 27 towers of the Kremlin in the Russian capital, Moscow, it is President Vladimir Putin who decides even who to run in an election, including the opposition members. Unfortunately,
we're a democracy. We're not there yet.
We are not there yet, and I doubt whether we'll
we don't
be there.
ever wanna be there.
And we can't be there, nonetheless, because
Shouldn't.
of the fight against the Kanu regime
Exactly.
and the new constitutional dispensation. Now, the gear is forward, nonetheless. We are breathless in terms of attaining that democratic height. Alenga, then it brings me to the aspect about the BBI here. The ODM party leader, Raila Odinga. Charles, do you have a soundbite for that? Yes, Odinga speaking in Kawangware yesterday, where he said the BBI rally, BBI report iko tayari. We'll be getting to that as you prepare the soundbite for us. Alenga, he said that the Building Bridges Initiative report is ready. I wonder what those who are opposing are opposing. The report isn't yet out. And he said this. Before I come and pose that question, Alenga, let's hear from the former Prime Minister who yesterday spoke here in Kawangware, Nairobi County.
BBI tulileta pamoja na ndugu yangu Uhuru Kenyatta baada ya ile michuano yetu ya 2017. Matokeo yenyewe mnajua, tukasema hii Kenya mpaka turudishe iwe pamoja, iwe kitu kimoja. Hatutaki tena tuende kwa debe ala baadaye watu wawawe, watu wakufe. Sawa sawa. Hatutaki tena kuwe na ubaguzi katika taifa letu, ubaguzi ya ukabila, ubaguzi ya dini, ubaguzi ya jinsia. Tunataka Kenya iwe kitu kimoja.
Alenga, this is my question then. Yes, appreciated they're coming together for purposes of peace, stability in the country. But is this the easy, immediate fix to our problems, and can it free us from the shackles of political violence?
Ayub, our politics or our issues as a country are very known. Like, we know our issues, we know where we have the problems. We do not even need a document to remind us of our issues as a country. Those are things that we need, we know them, we know where the problem comes from, we know about an equal distribution of resources. We know how it is difficult for someone to get employment in this country. We know how canvassing really works for some people. We know all those nitty-gritties that amount to the problems that this country has. So we cannot purport to over-rely on what other people tell us. Now, these are your problems. But then, what do we need? We need a ruling class that is committed to solving these problems for a better country. But above all, we need a population that is ready to demand these things from the leaders. Ayub, if you are employed here and your employer doesn't care, even if you turn up to work, if you do your day's job or not, he doesn't care, he doesn't ask you anything. You will actually do this job the way you like.
Okay.
But because you know there are certain metrics to your daily duties, you are called unto that every day. But then our political space is in such a way that the moment we elect someone and call him Mheshimiwa, then he becomes immune to even simple questions of like, okay, you were given this money, what did you do with it? You said you will do this, what happened?
Okay.
But then we want to, we want to narrow down the discussion to two individuals, either Ruto or Raila. That is not our problem. Our problem is not even individuals. Our problem is in how we treat one another in this country and the country that we envisage for us to live in.
Okay. Is that then attainable under the BBI? And is it the course correction point of our problems? That is my question, post-2022.
I'll agree with what Honorable Raila said. Those who are opposing, he doesn't know what they are opposing. And those who are agreeing, he doesn't know what they are agreeing. I am also waiting for that document so that I can go through it the same way I went through the draft that was shared out. But I'm very disappointed that Benji, from page 19 to page 98, which had the recommendations, he only saw one, which is expanding the executive. That is how we reduce conversations of national importance in this country.
Okay.
And then we trivialize a big issue. Then we make people stick to one point. Benji picked that alone Same way Ruto picked that alone, same way a number of people have picked that alone, and they want to center our conversation on that alone.
Because that's a big thing.
Could they be generous enough to expand the document and tell us, also, we are not happy with this. We are not happy with having an undivisive election. And then tell us, why are you not happy with an undivisive election? And then, an undivisive election, what is the document prescribing, even the draft itself? Are those bad things? And if they are bad things, how can we farm them up to be better things? We cannot always say in this country, we will always have yes and no. There's some time we can come to the table and find a common ground on issues.
The need to
are these our parting
final response? Yes, as you respond to Alenga and also
Tafadhali Wakili, help me with the Constitution. The answer to this BBI stuff is very simple. I'm not even going to take so much time to go into many details and to read all those many recommendations he's talking about. I was part of, you see these donor partners in the back here? Under the National Civil Society Congress, the drafting, evaluation, and campaigning for this constitution in 2009 that was then promulgated in 2010. This constitution, from Article 1 to Article 35 that talks about freedom of information, which is very important for you as a journalist, to consumer rights in Article 46, to the definition of the roles of government, and into devolution. It is a lie that this constitution needs to be amended. This constitution, if you read it, is literally unbelievable because they looked at different jurisdictions and borrowed the best. This constitution has, for example, 2 independent offices, which bring accountability in this country.
That is of the Auditor
Control
General
of Budget and the Office of the Auditor General that has been lampooned, that has been fought. This constitution has everything, my brother, that you need in it. This constitution, in black and white, defines what leadership and integrity is as far as how you hold office, how you can recall an MP. It only requires subsidiary legislation. For us to go and amend this constitution to do those funny things they're talking about is disingenuous, is wrong, and many honest leaders will tell you that.
Okay, thank you so much. Benji, Ndolo.
Benji,
it is really,
I'm happy that
you do not reinvent the wheel.
Thank you, thank you.
Implement the Katiba. Then you'll have no problem.
Benji, I'm happy that you agree with me that our problems are known. We know our problems.
And
we know
they're not
where
in
the issue
BBI.
is. But
how much are we even spending in BBI to go and launch a document for 50 million shillings, blowing smoke and all of this? Let's be serious.
Why have we stuck at implementation? What can we do to move forward and just implement this
right
constitution?
leaders, simple as that.
In 2013, we put this constitution aside and suggested 2 leaders that were indictees at the ICC leaders.
That's where things went wrong.
Thank you so much. Benji Ndolo.
Why lie?
Benji Ndolo and Alenga Trusted. Your time is appreciated. Thank you so much.
See you next Monday.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate your time and your presence here on the broadcast. And thank you to you too for watching. The number has been 0791 478 990. The hashtag on Twitter, NewDayKE, the short SMS code 40920. In the next 15 minutes, we'll see you for the 1 p.m. news here on the broadcast. Bye for now.